Gentlemen, without further ado, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Don Tapscott.
Me and Kevin, we're like that. Marnie, thank you so much. That was like, I think, the most thoughtful introduction that I've had in a long time. It was also too kind. We're going to have some fun in the next hour, but before we get to the fun, you have to listen to me. And what I'd like to do in the next 23 minutes or so is convince you that philanthropy and fundraising is going through a very profound change. That in the old model, donors were courted by fundraisers. And if they successfully got an agreement to give a gift was given, a transaction was done, and the donor was graciously thanked. In the new model, there's a very profound change. And I'd like to just read you a couple of sentences from an article that I wrote for this event. Charities can now build deep relationships with philanthropists, and largely because of the internet. And one result is that donors can become more deeply engaged with causes. All parties become part of a network and therefore can view themselves differently. Donors become more like investors in social innovation rather than simply passive donors. And they're looking for a return on their investment. Charities can view themselves as participants in complete networks for solving problems, and as a result, achieve more sustainable funding. Now, the theory for that point of view, actually, by the way, you know, people say, please turn off your mobile device. Please turn on your mobile device. Tweet away if you would. It's kind of small there, but my Twitter name is @dtapscott. So the theory for this point of view comes from my most recent book, co-authored with Anthony D. Williams. It's called Macroeconomics. And in the book, we argue that because of the internet, it's not about websites, stickiness, clicks, page views, .coms, hooking up online, but rather has become a global collaborative platform. And this is leading to a very profound change in our economy and in society. Arguably, the industrial age is finally run out of gas. And we have a whole set of institutions that are now being transformed through the internet for a very different model, a network model. And in fact, this is a new age, arguably, that we're entering, an age of networked intelligence. Now, why is this happening? Well, there are four big drivers. First is technology. The internet is becoming a big global computer, and every time you use it, you're programming this computer. Every time you do a Google search or upload something on a Pinterest or do a remix of a movie or even enter something into Facebook, you're programming this machine, a machine that humanity is creating. And the way that we're using this machine is not fundamentally to access information. We're using it to share our intelligence and to collaborate. This is not an information age. It's an age of collaboration and of networking intelligence. Secondly, we have a new generation to come of age, first ever to come of age in the digital age. If any of you have kids under the age of 33, you know what I'm talking about. These kids are different. I started studying kids as a generation when I noticed how my own children were effortlessly able to use all this sophisticated technology. And at first I thought, my children are prodigies. But then I noticed that all their friends were like them, so that was a bad theory. So I wrote a book back in 1997 called Growing Up Digital. And flash forward to today, they're not just growing up, they've grown up. And there's no more powerful force to change every institution than a generation of digital natives. I'm a digital immigrant. I had to learn the language. The third big change is a social revolution. There are now 1 billion people on Facebook, and we're collaborating together as people very differently. And this is leading to all kinds of things, right up to insurrections around the world. The Arab Spring, for example. It wasn't caused by social media, it was caused by injustice. It wasn't created by social media, it was created by a new generation that wanted hope and that didn't want to be treated as subjects, but the media was central. The final big change is a change in business. We have this mess in the world. And arguably all these things, you know, the sovereign debt crisis in Europe and the fiscal mess in the United States and the global volatility and, in our economy, these are now not just random events. They're all part of a sea change that the institutions of the industrial age are now coming to an end. Now, what does this mean for fundraising? And what does it mean for philanthropy? Well, I spend most of my time talking to enterprises and to governments. And I argue that the internet is changing the deep architecture and structure of our organizations, of how we orchestrate capability to innovate, to create goods and services, to engage with the rest of the world. And sure enough, this is transforming philanthropy. Now, I come at this primarily not as a philanthropist or as someone who's studied philanthropy. I come at it observing the day-to-day activity of my wife, who wakes up in the morning thinking every day about how do we create a billion-dollar psychiatric institution in Toronto. And I've learned very much from her. Now, the first big theme is collaborative innovation. The internet's dropping transaction costs. I don't know if any of you recognize this guy. His name is Rob McEwen. The reason I know this story, he's my neighbor. And he moved across the street from me. And he says, held a cocktail party to meet the neighbors. He says, "You're Don Tapscott. I've read some of your books." I said, "Great, what do you do?" And he says, "Well, I used to be a banker, and now I'm a gold miner." And he tells me this amazing story. He took over a gold mine, and his geologist couldn't tell him where the gold was. So he'd give them more money to get more geological data. They couldn't tell him where to go into production. After a few years, he's so frustrated, he's ready to give up. But one day he has an epiphany. He wonders, if my geologists don't know where the gold is, maybe somebody else does. So he does a radical thing. He takes his geological data, which in the mining industry is your biggest secret, he publishes it on the internet, and he holds a contest called the Goldcorp Challenge. It's basically $500,000 for anyone who can tell me, do I have any gold, and if so, where is it? He gets submissions from all around the world. They use techniques that he's never heard of, and for his $500,000 in prize money, Rob McEwen finds $3.4 billion worth of gold. The market value of his company goes from $90 million to $10 billion. The market value of Goldcorp today is $36 billion. And I can tell you, because he's my neighbor, he's a happy camper. Now, he thought differently about capability. He thought about capability being inside but also outside the boundaries of an enterprise. And if you're a fundraiser, you don't think about donors as being external parties. Think of them as being part of your business ecosystem and part of your net. Don't focus on them, engage them. You know, don't have centricity or targeting only. Have co-innovation, co-creation. Think of them as your partners and potential partners in creating value. I mean, that's what Procter & Gamble does. 60% of all of its innovation comes from outside the company now. Talent doesn't need to be inside. Threadless is a company where its customers design its products and services. Its customers design its clothing. I call this prosumers, turning consumers into producers. Co-innovate, co-create value. Collaborative innovation is a huge driver. Denny, of course, is involved with the Toronto Symphony, an extraordinary program called Soundcheck, where they're reaching outside their boundaries. They've engaged thousands and thousands of young people in a program. You go to the TSO today, it has a higher proportion of young people in the audience than any symphony in North America. And these kids are part of kids, up until 30, are part of a real community. They meet each other, they go to the symphony, but they're engaged. They have social activities. There are marriages that have resulted from this. It's thinking differently about the boundaries of a corporation. The second theme is openness. I wrote a book about this about a decade ago, and it was very bad timing. My mother, I think, bought most of the copies. But it argued that organizations are becoming naked. And if you're going to be naked, there are some corollaries that flow from that. One is that fitness is no longer optional. You need to get, if you're going to be naked, you better be buff. And if you are buff, if you have good value, but if you also have the values of integrity as part of your bones, then you can build trust. And transparency is not something to be feared, it's something to be engaged. Well, flash forward to today. This summer, the theme of TED, you know the big conference is TED Global in Edinburgh. The theme was radical openness. And I actually gave the opening talk at this thing. It's an extraordinary thing. Since I gave that talk a couple of months ago, 500,000 people have watched it. But the point here is that if you're a fundraiser, you can undress for success. You know, because in this new environment, donors think of themselves as investors. They're going to want to have full access to all kinds of financial and other information. And if you open up, if you build transparency, you drop transaction and collaboration costs, and you increase trust. Because trust is the expectation that the other party will be honest, that they'll be considerate of your interests. You're not just trying to get money from somebody. You really care about them becoming engaged in an important cause, that you abide by your commitments. That's part of integrity, that you're accountable. And the other thing is that you're open. The expression, what are they hiding, shows the relationship between transparency and trust. So open up. It's good. Molecularization. Now, a molecule is the smallest particle that a substance can be divided into and still maintain the original properties of the substance. The industrial age was an age of mass, not of molecules. Mass production, mass distribution, mass marketing, mass media, mass education. And for each of these, something in the center pushed out standardized products, units, services, whatever, to passive recipients. Well, now masses can break down. Just like in a mass, speaking of molecules, there are electrical forces that hold these molecules together. But in liquids, molecules can move around more. In gaseous substances, molecules are free to escape. You have liquid crystals that have the properties of liquids and also of solids. Well, fundraising is being transformed by this. So we've got stuff like microfinancing now, where you can raise a lot of money through very small molecular elements, as opposed to through huge, massive donations. And of course, everybody wants huge donations, and increasingly with that, big relationships, social investor relationships. But Kiva's raised $400 million through very tiny donations. They're trying to get a $70 pump to a farmer in sub-Saharan Africa. For some reason, the World Bank can't do that. So Kiva goes out and through $25 donations, they've raised over $400 million, and they're making a big difference in the world. Do you know about Kickstarter? Anybody here? Put up your hands. Okay. Those of you who didn't, assignment number 1, go check it out. So this is being used for philanthropy, but it's also being used for innovation and entrepreneurship. So there's something called the Pebble Watch, and the Pebble Watch is this cool watch that is being designed and built, where your watch communicates with your mobile device. So Pebble went out onto Kickstarter, and they said, our target is to raise $100,000. They shut it off when it reached 10 million. They wanted 100,000, they raised $10 million, and the unit of donation was 25 bucks. So this is a huge new opportunity that we need to think about. Number 4, self-organization. This is a massive force. Alex Tapscott, about 5-6 years ago, he was 20 years old. He was in his 3rd year of university. He's my son. I gave him an advanced copy of a book I'd written called Wikinomics for Christmas. I gave him some other things for Christmas too, but he said, thanks, Dad. He went off, started reading the book. He came back a couple hours later, and he said, hey, Dad, this is a good book. It's like he's surprised or something. He says, I think I'll create a community on Facebook. Now, I had just come on to Facebook. It's like a number of years ago. And I said, can I watch? 15 minutes later, he's got the Wickonomics community. Another 50 minutes later, he's got 6 members. By the time we're eating turkey on Christmas night, he's got 130 members in 7 countries, 7 regional coordinators, a president himself, a secretary, and a chief information officer for the community. He puts out a PDF of the first 2 chapters of the book. Before I'm eating Christmas dinner, I got kids writing in saying, Mr. Tapscott, we found errors in your book. And the community is placing demands on me. One of the kids writes in and says, exactly how is Mr. Tapscott going to be contributing to our community? What is this? 2 words, self-organization. Self-organization's been around throughout human history. Language was a function of self-organization. There's no central committee of the English language that said this will be called glasses. It just kind of happened. But what used to take place over millennia or centuries can now happen on a single Christmas day. You understand this, good things can happen. Barack Obama did. I got an email about 4 or 5 years ago now saying, you know, the senator from Illinois, he thinks your book, Wickonomics, is the key to getting elected and transforming America. Go to mybarackobama.com. So I went there. There's my book right on the screen. He says, we believe in the principles of Wickonomics and the internet, and a book by Don Tapscott. So I'm asking you to believe not just in my ability to bring about real change in Washington, I'm asking you to believe in yours. And I looked at this thing, and well, my first reaction was, I am the man. But not so fast, Don, because it turns out I'm not the man. See, there was a Wickonomics community, but there was also a single moms for daycare for Obama community, and there was a young firefighters for Obama community. He created a platform whereby 35,000 communities self-organized, and that's what brought him to power. This is not about top-down command and control industrial age models. It's about unleashing the power of human capital. It's about creating the conditions where people are truly empowered and they self-organize to create value. 5th theme is interdependence. Now, when I speak to business audiences, I say, business can't succeed in a world that's failing. And we have interdependence now, the 4 pillars of society. I know you think there's 3, but there are 4. The first, of course, is the state. The second is the private sector, corporations. A third is the civil society that you're part of. And there's now a 4th pillar. You, as an individual, you can be a pillar of society. So 2 youngsters in Boston during the Haitian earthquake went onto the internet. Yes, Marnie, this internet is going to be a big thing. I'm thinking of investing. No. They went onto the internet, onto the Ushahidi network, and they found faint little messages in Creole coming from under the rubble of a shopping center in Port-au-Prince. They translated the Creole, they triangulated the location of these messages, sent the authorities in. They found a 7-year-old girl who'd been there for 4 years. She was dying. They saved her life. So 2 youngsters in Boston can be pillars of society helping to solve a global problem. So it means that we need to have these pillars working together in all kinds of new ways. Often when I'm in the US, people talk, there's this real anti-government attitude. You know, the best government is no government and so on. I did a talk in the New York Stock Exchange that was called TED Wall Street. And I talked to Wall Street about the situation. I showed them a chart. The chart had the top 20 banks in North America ranked according to their, how safe they are. Of the top 20 banks in North America, ranked according to their safeness, the top 6 are all Canadian. I was talking to Gord Nixon, who runs RBC, after the whole thing crashed, and I said, boy, you must be pretty proud of yourself. The Canadian banks came out of this looking great. And he said, no, not really. The structure of the mortgage market's different in Canada. It was because of good regulation the Canadian banks couldn't do the crazy stuff that they did in the US. So government's not the enemy. Government, the private sector, we all need to work together in new kinds of ways. And there's a big change. Have you seen this book, Philanthrocapitalism? It's a very good friend of mine, Matthew Bishop, was the co-author of this book. You've got major people like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett now. There's a big theme in the US. Be an entrepreneur, become a billionaire or a multi-billionaire, and then the coolest thing that you can do with that is to give it away. And not to give it away after you die with planned giving or something, to give it away during your lifetime so you can watch your social investment and see what kinds of returns that it has. Wow, what an amazing time to be a fundraiser. And the final theme is dynamic leadership. Now, the old model of the leader was Lee Iacocca. You know, a great visionary, sell a vision down. Chrysler will be transformed to the K car. Well, the new model is very different. The new model is about self-organization. It's about networking. It's about distribution of power. And leadership can come from anywhere. I mean, I've studied thousands of organizations over the years, and I've seen leadership come from a CEO right down to a clerical secretary who was the key person in the transformation of a new division of one of the biggest banks in the world. And she had what it took to be a leader. She willed it. The person at the top can't learn for the organization as a whole anymore. And leadership needs to come from everywhere. And now that we have these new collaborative tools, leadership can come from anywhere. In your organization, there are great leaders everywhere that want to be called forward. You need to find them. And leadership's not about, you know, selling a vision down. It's about working together in teams where you create new collective intelligence and collective power. So that's a very different model of the enterprise, and it's some principles, I think, that are transforming philanthropy and fundraising today. Now the fun part. I'm talking to Denny, and we were having this discussion about what are analogies to this new model of fundraising. And we started thinking, well, musical analogies. Maybe they would work. So we have things like symphonies. We have things like military bands. Military band would probably be the extreme case in point of the old model. You have a central leader, everyone follows, there's a script, everyone knows exactly what note they're playing, they're all marching together in lockstep, in perfect unison and harmony. That's the antithesis of the new model of the enterprise and of fundraising. So what I'd like to do now is to call up one of Canada's leading jazz singers, Shannon Butcher. Shannon, could you come up here and bring your band up as well? Shannon, a couple of years back, was named by iTunes as one of the hottest and best new young jazz artists to come onto the scene. She's got some great recordings that are out, a big following. She plays in clubs and concert theaters and festivals all across the country. Did a huge crowd in Nathan Phillips Square recently. And Denny introduced me to Shannon, and I'm very thankful for that because we've had a couple of amazing conversations. So Shannon, welcome.
Thank you, Don. Thank you for the wonderful speech.
Now, what I've done is we have these themes. Here they are, new models of the enterprise and new models of philanthropy. So Shannon, I wonder if you could maybe pick a few of these, start with one, and sort of as a jazz musician, how does jazz work and how might this theme be analogous?
Well, we could start right with number one. When you're speaking about collaborative innovation, I feel that's exactly what we as a band attempt to do every night. Our goal is to create something that's never been there before, brand new music every night. In our field, we call it improvising. So we have some parameters that we work within, and we get together a group of people who are all risk takers and all enjoy living on the edge a little bit, and we make some music together.
Risk-taking, that sounds scary. I mean, isn't there a lot of uncertainty when it comes to playing jazz? I mean, I don't see any music scores here anywhere. Couldn't you like have a train wreck? How do you avoid that?
Well, we try to avoid train wrecks. I think with uncertainty, we look at it as an opportunity instead of a threat. I like to think of mistakes as landing you somewhere you might not have landed before, so it takes you off on a brand new path. Together as a group, we work to come up with brand new ideas that are based upon the framework that I was mentioning. So for us, that would be we're all going to play the same song, we're all going to play in the same key, we're going to start off at the same tempo. Those are some of the frameworks that we use to try to make it a little bit certain.
Does it ever happen that you start off in different keys?
It does from time to time, but usually we notice quickly enough, and I hire people that are good enough that we can get back into the same key.
How does that
together.
happen? How do you, I mean, what's going on? You're in different keys. We got to get to a common key.
You have to use your really, really big ears. It's a compliment to tell another musician that they've got great ears.
Really?
I tell my students, I also teach music, and I tell my students you can close your eyes when you play, but you cannot close your ears, because music is all about listening. It's all about listening to each other. That's how we make our conversations happen.
So you're improvising, there's a degree of uncertainty, you have to listen carefully, and it's a big collaboration, basically.
Exactly, it's an innovative collaboration.
Okay, so could you play us a song?
Yeah.
And then we'll come back and have a little chat about what just occurred.
Yeah, let's show you guys what we're up to. So we're going to play a song. It's called One Note Samba. We're going to play it in the key of A flat major, and I guess I'll give us the tempo. And other than that, we're just going to jump in and have fun. You're going to do sure, a one, a two, a 1, 2, 3, and. This is just a one-note samba built upon a single note. Other notes about to follow, but the root is still that note. Now this new note is the consequence of the one I've just been through, as I'm bound to be the unavoidable consequence of you. Oh, there's so many people who can talk and talk and talk, and I have used up all my notes, and at the end I've got to talk. But I'll come back to my first note, as I must come back to you. I will pour into that first note all the love I feel for you. Oh, anyone who wants the whole show, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, well, he will find himself with no show. You better play the note you know. Just a one-note samba built upon a single note. Yeah, you can clap anyone who's down to follow, but the root is still that note. Now this new note is the consequence of the one I've just been through, as I'm bound to be the unavoidable consequence of you. There's so many people who can talk and talk and talk and just say nothing or nearly nothing. I have used up all the notes I know, and at the end I come to nothing or nearly nothing. So I come back to my first note, as I must come back to you. I will pour into that first note all the love I feel for you. Anyone who wants the whole show, re mi fa sol la ti do, well, he will find himself with no show. You better play the note you know. Thank you.
That was awesome. And that's pretty brave, coming to a convention at a convention center at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning and playing jazz. There
It is. The sound check was at 6:30, so that was...
Oh, my goodness.
I think some of the musicians might not actually have gone to sleep.
Yeah, that's when jazz musicians go to bed. So there, you can see the listening and like who's going to do a solo now and so on. Now, but you know this band. You've worked for years with all of these people,
well,
haven't
actually,
you? Or
this is the first time that we've all played together. So I know members of all of this band, and I've played with many of them in a variety of contexts. So that's the networking that I suppose I've done before we arrived today to bring this group together. But I didn't realize that Ross, who's here on bass, and Colleen, our sax player, had never met before today. I mean, they're both experts in their field, and so I just assumed that you had, because you're both superstars. But the work that we do in advance allows us to come together to play on the fly, if you will, which reminded me of your self-organization principle.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this, I'm thinking it's, rather than an enterprise, it's more like a project. Okay, so we have a project here, Monday morning, 9 a.m., sound check, even earlier. I don't know, what songs are we going to play? You know, that's pretty much how it goes, is it?
We do, as jazz musicians, work a lot in the project form. I would say that everybody in this band plays in many, many, many other bands. I mean, would you guys say you've played probably, or how many of you have played in at least 5 to 10 other projects, bands, in the past 30 days? Each one of you. So there's a lot of preparing to play with brand new people. Colleen, would you mind speaking to how you prepare to play with so many different people? Because I know you from a number of projects.
Well, I imagine the process is probably similar for most of us on stage, and fear is a great motivator. For me, the amount of preparation that I do before I show up for something makes the actual experience of it much better, because I can eliminate variables where I can and show up as prepared as possible for each project. So it just means a lot of homework, and then the experience of collaboration is it's possible to be in the moment of it and in the experience of it, and to contribute more if I show up more prepared, because then I'm outside of my own self, and I'm better able to listen and to collaborate.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you're saying to be in the moment, because again, to just maybe call upon my students, they want to improvise, but they want to prepare their improvisation. So can I practice the line that I'm going to play when I improvise? But it doesn't work like that. You practice a whole bunch of different lines so you can call them together. So whether you're playing with 3 people or 4 people or 5 people or 6 people, could we up the risk even a little bit more on this stage and,
that's going to make
bring
it
in
really
a new band
scary.
member?
Okay.
Would you guys like to hear Don play?
All right, full disclosure here. I'm in a rock band. It's called Men in Suits. We used to do a concert every year, whether our public demanded it or not. But Shannon said, well, why don't you try and sit in with the band? So this is like, talk about risk and experimentation, but we'll give it a go, because clearly I've never played with these people before either. So.
And I think that we should all be grateful to have our international superstar in the band, Since I've met Don, he's been to 4 corners of the globe, and so I'm so excited that you're here to play with us. So shall we do the tune Summertime?
Sounds good.
We're going to do the same thing that we did for the song before. We're going to choose the song so we know the melody and the harmony. The song Summertime. We're going to pick the key, C minor. And this time, Kevin, how about you start the tune? This is Kevin Barrett on guitar. He's going to start us off on Summertime. Jumping and the cotton is high. Oh, your daddy's rich and your mama's good looking. So hush, little baby, don't you cry. One of these mornings you're gonna rise up singing. Then you'll spread your wings and take to the sky. But until that morning, ain't nothing gonna harm you. With Daddy and Mommy standing by. Fish are jumping and the cotton is high, high, high. Daddy's rich and your mama's good looking. little baby, don't you cry. So hush, little baby, don't you cry. Don't you cry. Don't you cry. Yeah, Don. Great to have you in the band.
All right. Sign me up. That was so much fun. Okay, so there's a lot of all these principles going on. Everybody's listening. Like, who's going to play a solo next? Hey, and it was like, hey, Don, that wasn't bad. You want to go for another one? I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm good with that.
But I was noticing, I don't know if everybody noticed in Don's solo how you grew at the end and the rest of the band just came along with you, which I think just shows how we sort of share leadership, especially when we're all soloing, that we kind of have that dynamic leadership principle that you were talking about in action.
Now, how does that work? Because you're the singer, you're the leader of the band, right? But leadership does kind of get moved around and shared. I mean, what is your role? And sometimes you're not doing anything, are you? I mean, you're not singing, you don't have an instrument, so
it's true.
What's going on there?
I am in a unique position being a bit more of a melody instrument. Maybe Colleen at times would be able to attest to being the same. There are times when I am actually not singing, so how am I participating in the music? And I would say that that's through the act of listening. And there are some other things that are really important that aren't necessarily the music making, and that is saying, that was a great solo. You know, smiling at each other, the body language that we share when we're performing. And sometimes as a leader, you need to give space to the people in your group. And I think that that's something that as a singer, you're allowed to do a little bit more readily from time to time than, say, the drummer might not necessarily get to give space as often. I think it's interesting to look at each instrument and the role that we think that they're playing, that they each have that specific role. You know, Max on the drums is in charge of the rhythm, Ross on the bass is in charge of holding down the harmony, you on the piano or Kevin, you're filling out the harmony and I've got the melody, or I have the words so I'm telling the story. But in truth, we all share those roles together, because if you're not listening to the words I'm saying, then you might not be able to support my message to the group.
This is like Peter Drucker. Many years ago, he says, knowledge by definition is specialized. And everybody has a certain specialization, but somehow in jazz, it works together, where the whole is kind of greater than the sum of the parts. Very cool.
Yeah. Well, maybe we could do one more tune starting with a different leader. Would you join us for another song?
I would be pleased to.
Max and Ross, how about you start this tune? Yes. Ross just asked me what key it was to make sure that we're all playing in the same key. He's on board. Thanks, Ross. This is I'm Beginning to See the Light by Duke Ellington. I never cared much for moonlit skies. I never winked back at fireflies. But now that the stars are in your eyes, I'm beginning to see the light. I never went in for afterglow or candlelight on the mistletoe. But now that you've turned the lamps down low, I'm beginning to see the light. Used to ramble through the park, shadow boxing in the dark. Then you came and caused a spark that's a four-alarm fire now. I never made love by lantern shine. I never saw rainbows in my wine. But now that your lips are burning mine, I'm beginning to see the lights. Cared much for moonlit skies. I never winked back at fireflies. But now that the stars are in your eyes, I'm beginning to see the light. I never went in for afterglow or candlelight on the mistletoe. But now that you've turned those lamps down low, I'm beginning to see the light. Well, I used to ramble through the park, shadow boxing in the dark. Then you came and caused a spark that's so forlorn on fire now. Oh, I never made love by lantern shine. I never saw rainbows in my wine. But now that your lips are burning mine, I'm beginning to see the light. I'm beginning to see the light. I'm beginning to see the light. Thank you.
Okay, that was great. So I think we have time for one more, maybe, and one more song. So far, it's big innovation. There's a lot of creativity. There's a lot of improvisation, open. People are listening. Everybody's a molecule. We're all working together, self-organizing, but there's an interdependence. And leadership is constantly changing. So you want to just pick another one there? And or
well,
pick one to focus on?
Something happened in that last song that I thought maybe we could build upon in one more short song. Is that right, Denny? That in the concept of interdependence, we do something that we call trading in jazz, and that's when we take the overall form and we break it down and we each get a smaller piece of it. We call it trading. It's like trading of ideas. So in a song where there might be a 12-bar form and I would have a melody that goes over 12 bars, we could break it down so that we each take 4 bars. So you solo, and then I respond to you, to your solo. And it's just a great opportunity to be inspired by the other person, to give the antithesis of the idea they just shared with you, and it really puts you back into the moment when you're performing. So if we have time, maybe we could do one more song with a little bit of extra trading in it, and maybe some collaboration with a few of you out there. That's right. So we're going to do a little blues for you. And thank you all so much for listening to some jazz on a bright sunny morning. 1, in C. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and. Oh, every day I have the blues. Now every day I have the blues. Well, if you see me worrying, baby, you know it's you I hate to lose. Oh, and I'm gonna pack up my suitcase and move on down the line. I'm gonna pack up my suitcase and move on down the line. Well, there ain't nobody singing, there ain't nobody crying, because every day, oh, every day I have the blues. Oh, every day, yes, every day, oh, every day I have the blues. Well, if you see me worrying, baby, you know it's you I hate to lose. Collaborate with each other, and it's a conference about collaboration, so how could I not collaborate with you? This is a little something we call call and response, and I know you're all fundraising professionals, so if you put out the call, you get the response, right? You know how that works. So I'm gonna put out the call to you, and you respond back. Now, ba 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 da da, ba ba doo da da, beep ba ba da da. Wow! Ba-ba-doo-bow! Wee-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-bow! Yeah, oh, because every day I have the blues. You guys are great. We're all going on the road together after this. Every day I have the blues. Well, if you see me worrying, baby, you know it's you I hate to lose. Oh, come on now, every day I have the blues. Oh, now every day I have the blues. Well, if you see me worrying, baby, you know it's you I hate to lose. Yeah.
I'm gonna butcher everybody.
Thank you all so much for singing. That was fantastic. Thank you, Don.